Hello, hope all is well. So today I thought we'd look at nanOS 2.1.0, which adds some really cool things to the Nano Cortex. So first and foremost, the big thing for me are MIDI CCs and also tap tempo. So up till now, to turn effects on or off, we'd have to change preset. And then with regards to tap tempo, and I think MIDI clock is in there as well now, should we want it, we'd also need to change presets. And then depending on the sort of BPM value that we wanted for our delays, we'd have to change preset. So now we can set delays to be a subdivision, quarter note, dotted eighth, something like that. And then we can simply tap in the tempo, either on the device itself or thankfully through MIDI. Now I'll link to this in the description, but the manual has been updated online. And the important part, at least for me, is the listings of the MIDI CCs that are now on the Nano Cortex. There's a few things we can do here now. We also have the expression pedal control. So you could assign, depending on the MIDI controller you have, you could assign, say, an expression pedal that's connected to your MIDI controller and assign that to CC number 1. And then depending on the value that it's sending out, that would be the expression pedal, if that makes sense, that's going into the Nano Cortex. And depending on how you set up that expression pedal, you can set it to whatever kind of values or, device or effect that you want within the Nano Cortex. Now the cool thing for me are all these sort of bypass modes that have now been added. So along with, say, the input gate, capture slot, cab IR and things like that, we can now turn on or turn off any of the effects slots that we have set up. And it's very easy, you know, they have different CC values and they have an off or an on depending on which state you want to set them at. And at the end, we finally have utility control. And one of the big things that for me has finally been added as well has been tap tempo. So now thanks to MIDI CCs, we can also tap in the tempo on a MIDI controller with this CC value. And we have tuner access as well, depending on how we want to do it. Now I have this really small pedal train Nano board and I'm using a USB power bank to power the Nano. And I've also got one of these M-Vave chocolate MIDI controllers that is really small and it's also battery powered. And this all fits on this tiny board. So I can basically take this with me anywhere. And because it's battery powered, I don't have to worry about finding like a power outlet or something like that. So I'll show how I've set up the M-Vave chocolate so you have an idea of what to do to set up MIDI CCs on your device. Now I've hooked up the MIDI controller to my PC using USB-C, and then by using CubeSuite, which you can download from the M-Vave website, we can then access the controller and program it so it does the MIDI CC commands or MIDI changes the way we want it for the Nano Cortex. Really easy, you just open the app up and then it will scan for devices that are connected, and then foot control will pop up, which is the MIDI controller. We'll click on that and then we get this screen. I've already set things up. I'll walk you through it so you know what's going on here. So typically when you buy this, it'll be set up for program change A mode, i.e. On each foot switch you're changing preset or program change. So it's going to go PC1, PC2, PC3, etc. However, what we want is to change CCs on the unit. At least that's how I want to set it up. So for that, the best way of doing it is going to Advanced Custom Mode. And then over here, we have the different foot switches that we can select. So we have foot switch A, foot switch B, foot switch C, and D over here. And the important thing here, and that's because how the MIDI CCs are set up on the Nano Cortex, is we need to take the second mode. So mode single step, switch between two banks. But in essence, we're switching between two values, if that makes sense. So in the first bank, we basically want to say, turn the effect on. And then in the second bank, we want it to say, turn the effect off. So I'll start from scratch so you have some idea what's going on. So typically when you first load this up, you go to advanced custom mode and it's in mode single step. You want to switch it to the second mode, and then we'll have these two that open up. And over here, we want to change the command that's going out in this bank, so A bank here. So we double click on that. We stick to channel 1, and that's this channel I've set up on the Nano Cortex. We change MIDI type to CC. And then under data, data 1 is going to be the CC number that we can see over here. And then data 2 is going to be the value that we're sending there. So for this foot switch A, I want it to turn on FX slot 1 on or off. And for that, we'll need CC number 37. So we'll put in 37 here. And we want it to turn it on when we hit the foot switch. So we'll set that value to be 127. And then on B bank, which is, well, that would be the second time that you press the foot switch, we want it to turn it off. So the same thing again, we'll hit add, double click here, we go down to CC. So data 1, it's the CC number, so 37 in this case. However, we want it to turn off that effect slot. So then we go for 0 here. And there we go. That's all you have to do for that foot switch. And I've done the same thing here for foot switches B and C, which I've already set up. And here I've gone for CC number 40 and CC number 41, so turning on and off. And those are basically delay, so FX slot 4, and a reverb, which is FX slot 5. You can, of course, set this up however you want. And finally, on foot switch D, or the last foot switch on there, I've set up to be tap tempo. So it's CC number 42, and then a value between 0 and 127 to set the tap. I've set up in the same way as that, it simply just worked. And so foot switch D is like any of the other foot switches. We've set it up to be single step switch between two banks. And again, in A bank, we've set it to be CC number 42, data 2, 127. And in the second bank, it's CC number 42, and then data 2 is 0. So now I'll unplug this, I'll hook it back into the Nano Cortex, and I'll show a few things on the device itself. Now, sorry for this slightly archaic way of doing this and filming the phone, but in essence, the Cortex Cloud app has also been updated. If you're on Android, something that happened for me at least is when I updated the app, it wouldn't start anymore. And the easy way around that is you go to Settings, App, and then you clear the cache and you clear the app data, and then it should load back as normal. Now, the one thing here is that we now have tempo as an option. And to get to that, we hit these 3 dots here. And as you can see here, we have tempo. When we hit that, we can either tap the tempo ourselves. And here, one thing to note is that we have global or preset. And I'd suggest, as we're using a MIDI controller to do the tap tempo changes, to set this to global. That way you're sure that even if you're changing preset or changing capture, as it were, you always have the previously tapped tap tempo that you've done. Of course, it depends on how you've set up the device and how you want to use it. So here's the device itself. So a quick test of the tap tempo. So that's working nicely. And then we'll see on the device as well, you know, as I'm hitting these foot switches, I'm turning the effects on or off. Now, one thing I'll note is maybe the first time you plug it in, you might have to press it like 3 times until it goes back to the usual operation, if that makes sense. And that's simply because as the MIDI CCs aren't a toggle, as it were, you're either sending an on or an off signal or command from your MIDI controller. Sometimes, for example, if you switch a preset and then you hit, you know, via your controller, you want to turn the delay on or off depending on the preset. If you're already in a preset and you turn, say, you know, say I've turned pitch on this preset, then I switch to another preset, the pitch goes off. But as you can see here, if I press pitch again, it won't do anything, and I have to press it again for pitch to turn on. And that's simply because this is sending an on or an off command. So if I'm in this preset and I say turn pitch on, which is done here, the next press of this foot switch will be to turn pitch off. So if I go to a different preset and pitch is off, for example, and I hit this foot switch again, it won't do anything. But if I hit it again, it will turn pitch on. So that's just something to bear in mind when you're using the MIDI foot controller. So there you go. I hope that was useful and sort of a good kind of overview of setting up the different MIDI CCs and what it's doing on the actual device itself. The only caveat being, I guess, on say a MIDI controller such as this one, you know, the thing with the effects on or off, it's a really good kind of control, and I think most companies do it that way. However, you got to bear that in mind when, say, you're changing presets on the device itself, and the MIDI controller, because there's no like two-way traffic, it doesn't know if the effect is on or off. So you might have to press the switch twice when changing preset to turn an effect on or off, but that's a minor thing. In any case, I'm really happy with this update. Finally got tap tempo and the MIDI control that was really kind of lacking on the device until now. So we can finally get that kind of like seamless interaction with effects, being able to turn them on and off without having to use some kind of workarounds. And the same thing goes for tap tempo, MIDI clock, and having the BPMs that we want on, or the subdivisions that we want on, say, a delay. And finally, the tones that you're hearing at the start, that was a capture of my Fractal FM3 preset. So the one that I use with my band Drogher, it's the one I use for live, it's the one I use for rehearsals and things like that. And it's basically a Spawn OD2-1, a Spawn Quickrod, a Spawn Quickrod amp, along with a combination of Otto audio IRs. And yes, the capture is on the Cortex Cloud. It's there for free. I just appreciate either a like, comment, subscribe to this video, as it really helps the channel out. In any case, thanks a lot for watching. Hope to see you in the next video. Take care.